Getting kicked out of school was actually worse than juvie because the social implications that came from that, everyone was we had a school with 3 grades, 500 kids a grade. So there's 1,500 people in this school that are all talking about, oh, Transue got kicked out, all this stuff. And
you're under a microscope.
The embarrassment was awful. I didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
Over the next few months, I'm on probation, and this was all, so it was 17 days into my senior year. It was 13 days before my 18th birthday. I will, again, I don't want to be dramatic, but if I did what I did at 18, I will put it this way, I would be a felon.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
So like 13 days difference was 4 days in juvie,
wow.
cushy little blankets and stuff, you're fine, and you get food, versus 13 days later, jail, and I would have been a felon. And who knows if I'd even be allowed in school.
Gosh, so in hindsight, it's almost like the higher power or God or whatever it is that you believe in saying, here's your chance, buddy. You got one shot here.
Yeah, and I blew that one, but it was for the best.
Okay.
Because over the next few months, the reason 18 was relevant is not only just, I mean, it is amazing. When I look back, I'm like, 13 days is the difference between you being able to do all these things now and probably going to jail for a year plus. So I thank God for that, but I don't even know how to comprehend it. Next few months, when I turned 18, one of the things about juvenile probation that's tough for these officers and counselors is you are now an adult legally, and they know that. And so they know that when you are off juvenile probation, you are going to have to integrate with the real world and in a very serious way, college, work, all this stuff. And so I never want the probation officers or counselors to sound stupid. That this is someone that is deceiving people on purpose. So So what was happening is I looked like I was doing well enough on probation.
Okay.
And what was happening is they have to integrate you. The worst thing that they know that they can do is keep you isolated for another 2 years, and then they let you go, and then you're really screwed. They have to see how will you behave on probation.
Mm-hmm.
So I got arrested in September of that year. This is now December. So there's been many months that I'm not allowed to do much. But what was happening is, the holidays are coming up. You're seeing family, whatever. So hear me out on before it sounds too ridiculous. I was allowed to go out on New Year's Eve, but no one was born yesterday. So the rules were this. You're only allowed to go out on New Year's Eve if your parents are going out and are willing to pick you up on the way home. Just so you know, the counselor, or the probation officer, could be waiting at your house. I realized how impractical this is now because they'd have to be waiting at all these kids' houses that are on probation. But I was very scared of this. So they're like, we could be waiting at the house with a drug test. You'll probably get drug tests in the next few days after that, if nothing else. So you're allowed to go out, but you got to be careful with your decisions. I get dropped off that night. 10 minutes in, I'm drinking and doing drugs.
Wow.
It is that impulsive and that stupid that I know these consequences are coming. I know that this can happen, drinking and doing drugs.
Wow.
We get picked up at 12 o'clock, just like we're supposed to. I haven't said we yet, so who's we? We is myself and my girlfriend. We had been dating already for about 3 or 4 years on and off at that time. She did some stupid stuff, but she didn't do stupid stuff in the way that I did stupid stuff. And when you are doing these things, it's not an excuse, but it's an explanation. You're like, there's this analogy, right? It's like you're the product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And the analogy is there's like this rotting apple. And it says that if an apple rots and the chemicals get out to the other apples, it actually rots them faster. That's real. That is real. So the analogy here is when you are on a downward trajectory, I found myself bringing everyone else down with me. And it's funny because I would have never, if you asked me, do you want to do that? It's like, no. But I guess it's a defense mechanism to our ego or something, or a validation or an excuse for what we're doing because look, they're doing it too. So I encouraged her to do a lot of the same things I was doing that night. The problem is she was like 5 foot, 5'1", 100 pounds soaking wet. So I already had a tolerance. She could not handle those things. And so we get into the car with my parents. We make it 30 seconds. I'm laughing because in hindsight, it's funny. It wasn't funny then, trust me. 30 seconds down the road, she is so drunk, she repeats a full sentence word for word to my parents. I mean, it was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. So what I mean is like, this would be the equivalent of you asking me, hey, how are you today? And I'm like, oh, I'm really good right now. And then there's a pause for a second. And then it's like, I think I didn't answer you. So then I said, oh, I'm really good right now. So she did that. I'm like looking at her like, are you? Oh my God.
It's a telltale sign.
Yes. So we are in a dark car, right? Because it's late at night and my parents are in the front seats and I'm like whispering to her. I'm like, shut up. Like what?
Be cool.
You don't talk. I talk. I got this. My parents knew what was going on.
Of course, yeah.
So my dad, who, again, nice people, slams on the brakes of this car, turns around with my mom, and they are screaming at the top of their lungs, and my girlfriend. Now, I grew up with a younger sibling. I don't know if anyone else grew up with a sibling that's listening, but sometimes you get in trouble with your sibling, right?
Yes.
So I was used to one of us gets it first, the other one gets it next, and I figured she was first because she's the one that said something stupid and pissed him off. But we go on for about a few minutes here, and they never started yelling at me.
Oh, interesting.
And my girlfriend loved me and didn't rat me out. And it wasn't until a minute into starting driving that, like, I mean, remember, I'm unfortunately on substances as well. So my thoughts are trying to wrap around this. And I realized, okay, they literally don't realize that I was stupid enough to do this. They're mad at her.
Think that she's a bad influence.
Yeah. And let's also call it what it is. Again, as amazing as my parents are, they know I do all this work and share these stories. We have to be realistic and say, there's probably a part of them that didn't want to.
They didn't. Well, of course. Yeah, of course they didn't. Yeah.
That I could be dumb enough to get in that car and do that. And I mean, it is almost unbelievable.
It is. Yeah.
We get home, and I promise this isn't just some random story about my girlfriend. This is actually the aha moment.
Okay.
We get home, and we go upstairs, and my choice in that situation should have obviously been, thank you so much for not ratting me out. If she ratted me out, my parents would have called the probation officer.
Yeah.
I'm 18 now. If I get caught doing drugs on probation at 18, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Period. I didn't do that. I lived in my own world at the time, and everything that happened to me was because I'm a victim and because it's someone else's fault, and I experienced these things, but there is no shred of personal responsibility for anything that has led up to this point in my life. So I start freaking out at her for getting caught for the things I made her do, even though we're only getting picked up by parents at all because of the choices I've made, and she's still willing to stick with me through all of this. Like, she should just be having fun on New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah.
Not advocating for teenage drinking, by the way, but I'm also not born yesterday, and I know if you're 17, 18, you're going to go out on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And I want to keep it real in the sense of not dismissing how nasty I talk to her, but it does matter to me. I would never do anything physical to someone. I've never done anything physical
yeah, of
to
course.
someone. You could still really hurt someone verbally and emotionally, though. I wake up in the morning, and she has already left, and that was not like her at all because, we would talk,
hang out,
yeah. And then I'm sober. So I'm starting to review the things of the last night, and all I could remember was her bawling her eyes out for an hour because I'm just being an a-hole. I'm just being nasty. And I call her to apologize, believe it or not. That wasn't something I normally wanted to do, but this is kind of like, you kind of have to.
Yeah, you knew. You felt it.
I had all these realizations, though, when I sobered up. There was something about remembering the way that she reacted, just the sadness and the tears and the upset. It was almost like these floodgates of self-awareness came in or opened up, and then the water came in. And so what I mean by that is rapidly, like almost like an adrenaline rush, how you think rapidly at the time. It was like all these thoughts started coming in where when I realized that that was not fair, I was willing to accept that that was wrong, all the other wrongs that I had been repressing, because they were there, I was just repressing them. Ooh, wait, why are your parents even picking you up? Why are you putting them through this? Why did you get in their car drunk and high? And then I thought about myself finally after all the other people I was hurting. I said, wait, bro, you are a smart guy, or you claim to be at least. You're on hard drugs on probation. And I finally realized, this is all within 30 minutes, hour span, sitting there in my bed. I'm on a path that ends in two ways, one of two ways. One path, this is the lucky one, I go to jail.
Yeah.
The other one, I die.
Yeah.
There is no other plan. There's no other road that I'm taking. This is where my life is currently at. And no one's going to get me out of this. No one can get me out of this. Mommy and daddy can't come and save you. Lawyer can't come in and do stuff. You are doing drugs on probation. You're hurting everyone around you, and you're hurting yourself the worst. How much more do we have to do before we realize this plan isn't working?
Okay.
So I call her to apologize, tell her all these realizations or whatever. And this is where, you remember you said how God was trying to show you something.
Yeah.
I do believe that. And I also believe God's fair and just. And so he knows how to solidify things. And make sure you actually learn the lesson. So when I called, she didn't answer. Now, this was unlike, she would answer me at 3 a.m. And I don't want to act like every girl's been through this, but I think you know what I mean.
Oh, every 18-year-old, an 18-year-old boyfriend.
Has the stupid jackass guy that they're over.
Yeah, it's the Romeo and Juliet. It's
they'll answer at any time. Yeah. She'll pick me up from jail. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But she didn't answer that time. And I kept calling, and her phone was on, and she's, I always misrepresent this story. People start to think like, did something happen to her? No, she's safe. But what she was saying by not answering is that was my final straw with you, dude. Like, I can't.
She also had an aha moment.
I've never heard someone say that in 10 years. And yeah, that's a really good way of saying it. Yeah. She had that moment at the same time. And when I realized, because this was the only person I'd ever like been with, my parents had met in high school. They were with each other. They're still with each other 30 something years at this point. I grew up with that. And it wasn't a religious thing. They're actually not Christians. So it wasn't a religious thing. I just saw two human beings leading by example with this. I saw the fights, I saw the problems, and I saw them come out on top every time. So I always had this ideal in my head that I want to be with one person. And even with all the craziness of my life, I still had this ideal that that's what I wanted to do. And when I realized the stuff that I had done had pushed away this person that I thought I was going to marry and spend the rest of my life with, I still look at that as, one, God being fair to her, but two, helping me out, because my little half-baked realization, I might have done that for 24 hours and then been back on drugs.
Yeah.
I needed something that was like,
yeah,
no, this is going to stick.
Yeah.
And this one's going to hurt a little bit. That got me on the right track. That was the aha.
That was the moment.
This is not going to change unless I change. I didn't even know what was wrong with me. I didn't have the labels for all these conditions at this point. I still didn't know what a panic attack was fully. I just knew that I get very anxious.
Hey guys, I would like to take a moment to introduce you to our app, Yoga Plus. You will have access to an incredible selection of videos led by top instructors in yoga, fitness, nutrition, and so much more. Download our Yoga Plus app, available on iOS and Android today.